Good. Hello, everyone. Really pleased to be moderating this panel as we are going to be discussing how physical um, uh, stores, brands are transitioning into the metaverse. It's going to be all about that transition, that merge between the old and the new. I'm going to let the speakers introduce themselves, and then, of course, we can start. Justin?
Hi everyone, Justin Bannon. I'm co-founder of Boson Protocol. So Boson enables brands or anyone to sell physical items as NFTs in the metaverse.
Hello, I'm Carol Hilsom. I'm from Farfetch. So Farfetch is the platform for the luxury industry. It was founded in around about 2008 by Jose Neves, and now has around 3 million customers worldwide and a whole host of luxury brands and boutiques that sell through the Farfetch platform, as well as owning companies like NGG, Stadium Goods and Browns. In particular, very aligned with what we're talking about today, I lead the Open Innovation Strategy, and part of that is running the Dream Assembly Basecamp Accelerator, which is launched just earlier this year and very much focused on supporting fashion tech Web3 founders.
Hi, I'm Miriam Molino. I'm responsible for the vertical practices at Estivo Systems, and we are a company that take care of master data. So the reason why I'm here is because we are in this exploratory momentum that I think that many of the brands and companies are of understanding what's in the metaverse for us, accompanying our customers as we take care of their product data, customer data, supplier data, so trying to understand how they can leverage those data to move into the metaverse in a, say, more efficient way that they did when they entered into the e-commerce.
Hello, I'm Louis from France. I'm CEO and co-founder of Wine Bottle Club. So basically, I used to work 7 years in the wine industry, and I integrated crypto payments for fine wines in 2018. And I created with my partners Wine Bottle Club, which is a Web3 club, a Web3 network. So we are gathering people around a glass of wine. So we make traceability of the consumer, not traceability of the goods. And then our main goal right now, as we build the strongest community in the world, is to help wineries and also spirit houses to make the transition between Web 2 and Web 3.
Hi everyone, I'm Mike McGrail from White & Mackay, a Scottish whisky company that dates back to 1844. We own brands like the Dalmore and Jura, and we are probably the least Web 3.0 company you can imagine. I've been there 3 months. I drive all the digital marketing, so I have been tasked with looking at how we can maybe drag ourselves up to date. So far we sold some NFTs with a physical bottle through Blockbar, which was an education in itself, and that was done before I even started. There was zero strategy, and if anybody wants to spend the equivalent of £10,000, there's still 5 available, which pains me anyway. So that's me. So I guess I'm here from the opposite end of the spectrum, having not gone there yet, really.
Great, thank you so much. Lastly, well, my name is Michaela. I lead institutional relations for Huobi Global, the crypto exchange, institutional trading unit of Huobi, who also has a 1 billion fund only for Web3, for investing in Web3 projects. I think I'm going to start this panel by asking you, how are physical brands bulletproofing or future-proofing their brands or ventures by entering the metaverse, and more importantly, what will happen to those that are not ready? What will happen to those that don't plan ahead to merge with this technology?
Well, my view is that the metaverse is kind of like the next iteration of the kind of primary interface. So we've seen from print to TV, black and white TV, color TV, web, etc. And now we have the opportunity of engaging with each other and brands through an interface that is not flat, instead it's immersive, but also has all the benefits of digital and social, etc. And so I think we can look back at how previously these interfaces have been adopted and see that there is a threat opportunity for brands. I mean, that not only are there going to be new brands emerging that are more metaverse and Web3 native that they will need to deal with, but also that, you know, the kind of market share and competitiveness is going to be, you know, impacted by how well brands adopt this new interface. And you know, we at Boson we're seeing, you know, a lot of brands just recognizing that and saying, right, we want to get involved now. It's quite an experimental phase, but if we're going to, you know, if we're going to be kind of leaders in this area, then we need to start learning now. And it's kind of a bit like, you know, when did Amazon start getting involved in e-commerce? Well, they started when it was too early, and that's the right time to start.
Completely agree. I think in luxury, not necessarily known as a hugely digital pioneers, definitely, and we saw that within Web 2. But I think what we're seeing really, and we've having gone through Web 2 and then looking at the next wave of Web 3, there was lots of learnings that we, not just about e-commerce, that companies had to really take on board. Things like social networks, for example, born out of Web 2, really completely changed the way that you spoke to your customer and your customer spoke to you. You know, gone were the days where you just silently just showed them an advertisement and then you just didn't really know what they were thinking about it. And that kind of two-way conversation was really born out of that Web 2 phase. And I think within Web 3, what we're seeing is a completely different way to build communities as well. Really, that kind of next wave of community build, next wave of what digital experience should look like, should feel like, should be about how are you engaging with those users, and then also like what are the assets that you're able to sell, and what is the asset that has value to these consumers as well. So I think for me, I kind of believe that there's still an option about going into Web 2 or Web 3, just as there was always an option to going into Web 2. I think you just have to realize what that really means, and it means not just that kind of that sort of core element of Web 3. It's also really losing a lot of the understanding about how digital communities are evolving, digital ways of working, digital value is evolving as well, and I think that's quite a significant decision to make. But it's definitely up to the brand, but they have to have their eyes wide open about those kind of decisions. But I do think, especially within luxury, there will always be very much omni-channel and omniverse type of experiences, all the way from very much the kind of physical product, physical experience, and hopefully all the way through to sort of a pioneering digital immersive experience as well.
But I agree that the majority of the brands are still in an exploratory momentum, so trying to understand, and the different reasons for that. First is that we don't know what is the metaverse going to be. We have this super sexy picture of this type of immersive experiences with real-time interaction, but it is true that technology is not there yet, so we still don't know what's going to happen. And but it is also true that for certain segments of consumers that have grown with the gaming experience, using Roblox or Decentraland, or I mean, when there are millions of consumers experimenting, that's a reality that brands are aware of, and they want to interact with those consumers that are being formed as consumers surrounded by these type of experiences, and therefore the expectations on how brands should interact with them are different than the rest of consumer segments. So they know that's an opportunity there, as just to channel, a new channel, as it was e-commerce some years ago. It is a new way of redefining the whole business. They still don't know. They're trying to do some experiment, and I mean, the majority of luxury brands are there. A lot of beauty and cosmetics are there. Many fashion companies are there with different types of approaches, as creating a virtual world, creating and launching digital collections, moving to the gaming. They are just trying to understand till what extent this concept of metaverse is going to help them to better position their brands with new generations, is helping them to expand their revenue figures, and they're also learning lessons to define what is the best way to develop that internally. So when e-commerce was launched many years ago, the majority of the companies decided to create a new business unit and have like a kind of isolated approach, which was good because that could receive the necessary care and the necessary investment. But at the same time, that created a silo, and many companies have been suffering and investing a lot trying to reintegrate online operations into their general operations, and merging channels and moving into a hybrid environment, which is the environment in which we are going to live, is merging digital and physical and providing a seamless experience to customers. So they are acting carefully and understanding how they should move forward with Metaverse. So shall I experiment in an isolated way? Shall I integrate somehow with the rest of the operations? What are the technologies that I need to embark? What are the new skills that I need to embark in order to be competitive in this new environment? So a lot of experimenting there, a lot of collaboration, and this is something that very good that Metaverse is bringing in. So different companies are starting to play together. So for example, ASOS with Fnatic, or L'Oreal with Fnatic, or Forever 21 with Barbie. So we see a lot of incredible collaborations in this movement towards the whatever it is, the metaverse.
Yes, as Carol and Miriam said, transition depends on the kind of brands that you are managing. In our case, Wine Bottle Club, we are managing wineries, so we are talking with, of course, some luxury products, because fine wine is a luxury product, but we are also talking to countrymen, so it's not an easy task to bring them to the Web3. So I would say two things to those kind of brands. First, on one hand, I would say that they need to go quickly into the Web3. I'm talking about the Web3 in general, not only about the metaverse. They need to go quickly because, in a way, this is inevitable. So, of course, for the technology, but right now, if you go right now into the Web3 communication, it's a great tool to make marketing through metaverse, of course, but through NFTs, through artists, through a lot of things. And you can work on ex nihilo brands or on brands that have a long history. So the first thing is to go quickly. On the other hand, I will say, okay, go slowly into the Web3, because I saw a lot of brands, even in the wine and spirit industry and other kind of brands, they go very fast into the Web3, the metaverse. They are building very beautiful metaverse on Sandbox, on Spatial, and so on, but there is no one on their metaverse. So what I would say is, before building some great products, some great metaverse, build on your community. This is what we started to do. You know, I'm not here as an expert. I'm not an expert in the blockchain and so on. I would not say that. I'm just a man of experience. So I started my business, and I have an experience of launching an NFT collection. And at the beginning, when I talked to the wineries, they said, okay, you don't have any background and so on, you don't have any community. So I started to make my community, and then you can sell some products, you can invite them to the metaverse. But yes, the main point for me of the Web3, and this is the Web3. The Web3 is the web of trust. If the Web 1 is the web of information, the Web 2 is the web of services, the Web 3 is the web of trust. So in our case, we had two paths. We had two different verticals. The first one was to make traceability of the physical product, but we decided to make the traceability of the of the holder of our NFT to give him some advantage. So yeah, build your community before building metaverse and products.
Yeah, I mean, we face a number of barriers because we are a regulated product, and we also don't even sell directly to our consumer. So the spirits industry, the older whiskey houses like ours, have been very slow in actually going D2C. So it's quite difficult for us to circumvent this big chain we've got of retailers and the on-trade. For the Dalmore, which is a luxury brand, you know, our entry-level whiskey is £60, which is accessible for a lot of people, but we just auctioned a bottle in Sotheby's for 110,000. I think our entry point will be through collaboration with our lifestyle brands that we need to get better at collaborating with, and that will be the entry point. Until there's that comfort within our business and probably the wider industry that it's a place to go, and some brands that we would consider competitors are in there already, but you know, we tried these NFTs, very basic point, it didn't work, and the problem is the Dalmore average consumer is 55 plus male who's spending the money, so there's so much education required, so it's going to be a very slow trickle, probably through collaborations. And as a marketer, I like to think of the marketing funnel, so awareness, consideration, preference, I think, and purchase obviously. I think when we get down to the what we call the loyalty and the advocacy levels, they're probably where I would see the most benefit for us down the line. So yeah, it's going to be a slow one, but without partnering with brands that I think have already been in there and that are very relevant to our audience, I can't see us jumping in full scale. I mean, I would love to. We create phenomenal, like real life experiences at the distillery for high-end customers. I'd love to go and recreate that in the metaverse, but that's no way I'm getting the budget sign off. But also, like you say, getting people in there in the first place right now would be very difficult for us.
I think that's such a good point. Whereas what we see within Farfetch and even within our accelerator, when we launched in June, July for applications, we had over 200 companies asked to join the accelerator, very much just looking at fashion tech companies that are looking at a Web3 use case. And actually, when the great companies that we have in our cohort, there's 8 still very early stage companies, but the vast majority of them have had some interaction with luxury brands, which to be honest is fairly unheard of in a startup ecosystem, looking at sort of a general fashion tech startup ecosystem. Usually startups would take quite a long time to be able to get to the point that they have interactions or discussions with luxury brands, let alone that they would be actually testing anything with them. And several of our cohort have already had interactions and tests, and so you see this situation where, although the technology is very nascent, actually to cover off not the basic, but the first stage of use cases that we can see around authenticity, about NFT drops, around loyalty, there's enough players there to be able to test that, and actually you've seen a lot of luxury brands actually do some kind of test now. And I think where we are is this kind of next wave that you were talking about is, well, we've done this and we've had some great reactions, and there's been demand there. Sometimes there's been no demand, and that's all, you know, slightly embarrassing. But actually, what comes next? Like, how does this scale? Where is the kind of mature demand going to come from, etc. And I think what the stage is now is just into that kind of the second stage of test and learn. What is more significant? Where is the more significant ongoing demand, need, etc. going to come from? And that means like less, I think, more of the kind of one-off drops, and more actually building for quite a substantial future for Web3, particularly within luxury. And I think people like Boston definitely there doing that, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Having been involved in some of those sort of initiatives as well, and you know, I think what we're seeing is there is demand. You know, there's demand and there are barriers, and so you know that's not a bad place to be in. If you can sort of lower those barriers, you will see you know, kind of value flow. and one of the most significant barriers is the whole kind of Web3 user experience. So we are both ourselves, building a lot of these bridges to Web 2, so these kind of Web 2.5 solutions, and also with an ecosystem, because huge demand from your more mainstream brands, mainstream customers to engage in Web 3, NFTs, the Metaverse, and so we need to make that accessible and easy, and I'd say probably 70% of what we're doing now is building those bridges.
I was about to ask exactly that. I appreciate that you bring the barriers, because my next question was what were the main barriers our traditional brands were facing when entering the Metaverse. Just right before coming to the conference, I was grabbing a coffee, and someone saw my badge and said, what is this conference about? I said, well, it's all about the Metaverse. And the man just told me, well, my wife has a store in Oxford Street, and I've always wanted to jump, but when I started to see prices of the cost of actually developing this tech, they say, absolutely not, we're not doing this. Because of course they have to hire someone else, hire 2 more people to develop it, or hire a head of product just for this specifically. And he actually brought the point of Facebook. He said Facebook invested billions to bring in the company to the next phase. So my question to you is, let's speak now more about those barriers. How can we overcome those barriers, apart from cost, which is just one of them?
Can I just answer really quickly there? I think like with Web 1, there was this whole industry of quite expensive kind of, building websites, and everything was bespoke and expensive, and then you end up with kind of like Wix and Squarespace, and that's happening very, very rapidly in the Metaverse. I mean, we're doing a partnership with this amazing company called Metamondo, where brands will be able to buy a store that's kind of pre-configured and they can customize, buy that store as an NFT with commerce plugged in, and that store will render across all of the major kind of metaverses. And so very rapidly we're moving to this kind of mass customization model.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, sometimes you do still hear of people spending £150,000 on a basic website, and so there's still that business model around, I think. But I think even for us, we started in digital fashion specifically maybe about 4 years ago, and actually the real trigger for us to really dive into that space was starting to speak to startups who were using AI to drastically reduce the cost of creating digital assets at a luxury level of use case. So traditionally, going down the very sort of CGI specialist type of route, each item would be sort of £2,500. And now luxury level digital assets are much smaller to that, like closer to well under £100. And actually now we're already seeing probably in the next 12 months that will be fully automated, and so actually the cost will be very, very small. And that's all happened in a few years. And if you think, it's not necessarily just about Web3, but 3D assets are going to be like a huge fuel within the Web3 environment, especially for luxury, as well as things like avatars and avatar creation as well. So you start seeing things like those assets really come down to a point where you can actually fuel just a very scaled experience, and you'll see that across the board. As we're saying. And then I think the other barriers as well is as you've talked about, is the business model is very different for businesses now. Maybe even a short while ago you would be dropping NFTs, and that would really, one drop would give you enough cash flow to really fuel multiple different future use cases or plans. That's not the case anymore so much, and therefore you have to review this as a sort of different type of business model, different types of funding, rather than just being fueled by one NFT drop.
I think uncertainty is not helping by any means. So when you need to put money on the table, knowing where to go is very important. And at this moment of time, the clarity about what is the final picture that you are investing for is not very clear. So I'd say one is uncertainty. So I'm investing in what to create, what to interact with. So that's a lot of there. And the level of movement or traction is going to be very, very different depending on the sector that you're in. So there are certain areas that appear to be very much aligned to the experiences that metaverse technologies bring in. So for example, think about education, health. Many companies or brands are investing on trying to provide health services using metaverse technologies and physical and mental health. So there's a lot of new services using these technologies to help people and create those services. Of course, gaming industry, I'm not talking about that because that's clear, but then we also have the operational side of the metaverse. We've mentioned the metaverse as a new way of interacting with customers, but there's also the operational side of that. And here, for example, virtual reality is being used by many manufacturing companies to streamline their maintenance operations, to reduce the time that it takes to train someone to maintain complex assets. So that side, I think that it will have evolved even quicker because it's got a very interesting impact on cost. So there are certain barriers when it comes to moving to certain directions, and uncertainty, as I mentioned, is one. But there are other areas in which we will see fast movement.
Sorry. I said that I am not a blockchain expert, but I am an expert in barriers, because I used to have a lot of barriers from the wineries and the spirit houses, so I know a little bit about that. So one of the main is that the companies, they said, okay, I don't want to manage any cryptocurrency, and I'm not confident with it. So I have to tell them that it's not mandatory to use cryptocurrency. I would say that it's a shame because they miss a big part of the customers, especially the young customers. But it's not mandatory to use cryptocurrency. There are some solutions. In my case, in One Bottle Club's case, we used a solution called Crossmint. I'm pretty sure that there are other solutions to accept fiat currency for NFTs. But yeah, it's not mandatory to use cryptocurrency. This is one of the main points. But as I said, if you only use fiat currency, you miss the young people because they are using cryptocurrency very easily. So this is one of the biggest points. The other one is that they don't understand, they don't know their own needs. They said, okay, I want to go in the Web3. I can see that there is something happening, but I don't know what I'm going to do. So we have to explain them the solution. So it takes time. So it's not easy to make them understand. So as Miriam said, the education is very important. And I come back to what I said before about our community. In our club, Wine Bottle Club, we are teaching people, our Web3 customers, we are teaching them the wine, of course, but our wine customer, our older customers, we teach them the Web3 and what they can do with the Web3. And one last thing, one last barrier is about the virtual aspect. They don't understand, especially in the wine. The wine, you share the wine physically with people. So they said, I don't need a metaverse. I don't need a space to I don't know, to taste wines or something like that. And I just tell them that they already use the Web3 and the metaverse. For me, the metaverse is just internet, but in 3D. So customers already have an experience with when you go onto a website, you buy a bottle of fine wine, and then you have a description, so something very in a nutshell, you know, the wine, the composition and so on, the grapes, and then you get delivered and it's over. With the Web3, I said to the wineries that they can enhance the customer experience, and for instance, they can make like a wine tasting in the metaverse and so on. So the main point is to explain our very weird Web3 environment, but you can make it. It's not so hard. Yeah.
I mean, for me, in a traditional company, a phrase that sums it up, and excuse my language, but I told a colleague in my marketing team that I was coming down to do this, and he went, "Is that all that crypto shite?" So that's like literally what I'm dealing with right now, is that fact of that everybody just immediately says, "Oh, that's crypto," and so I've got this monumental battle in my hands to kind of turn the Titanic toward. I mean, if you look at our brand websites, we've got 10 brands. The current brand websites, which have zero functionality other than email lists, make me want to cry. So that I've got to start fixing things at this foundational level before we can even start moving into that space. So that external one, internally education piece is massive, but then externally, I'm probably in quite a good position where we have some younger brands and they've not established their audience or their user base. You don't really have a user base, and you can tell them from a tech background before whiskey, but yeah, so I think if we're going to start experimenting, it's not going to be with our big global brands. It's going to be these sort of challenger brands that we're creating right now, because the audience for those, like we have one called the Woodsman, for example, that's designed for mixing with cocktails, because we know that younger people are drinking more and more mixed drinks. So we wouldn't have such a big external barrier of education with a cohort of that audience. So yeah, but before we even get there, it's just that internal wrangle that I'm constantly gonna face. And I think having great partners actually will help that over time, because there's a syndrome within this business of always trusting the external view more, which is either right or wrong. But yeah, so if anybody wants to come up to Edinburgh and do a talk for me, that would be absolutely wonderful.
Good. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but I thought before jumping into another question, I think it's best to give the opportunity to the public. So wondering if there is any questions from the public here, if any questions for the brands that are currently speaking. Please.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So what is your intention when you are like trying to operate within a Web3 space or operating in that metaverse? Like, what is like your main thought process when you're trying to venture into this kind of space?
I think from Farfetch's perspective, we are the platform within the industry. So we're really always been about bridging the gap between brands and consumers and technology, and that was where kind of the Farfetch initial use case came about in 2008. And so really for us, we're exploring and supporting, and that's our area. We're excited about what Web3 and the Metaverse can bring. I think we're very aligned with the positive aspects of it, and that there is an opportunity within luxury, and we do see that there could be a pathway in which it could really build a whole new wave of thinking within the industry. But in terms of what our aims are and our intentions are, it's really about exploring and supporting in terms of everyone else in that ecosystem, and bringing everyone together, from brands to what we call startups, but kind of early stage companies, and the end consumer.
Yeah. I would like to add on that. It depends as well. I'm allowed to answer the question. It depends as well on the business that is jumping in the metaverse. I represent an exchange, for example. So for us to enter the metaverse, it's all about providing facilities as well. If an exchange is looking to jump into different metaverses, it's as well to provide on-ramps, off-ramps for crypto, for example. I'm just speaking from this side. So I think that it will depend on the business and what we ultimately want to get out of it. As well, from an exchange side, it will be as well about user acquisition. Okay, how many users can we get from that? So, just to put an example, it's not like a specific rule. Every business wants this. It will depend pretty much on the type of business that is jumping in the metaverse.
I think with crypto having quite a bad press at the moment, with all these issues with kind of different exchanges going bankrupt, etc. We should remind ourselves, what Web3 is about. Web3 is a response to the fact that kind of Web 2 is sort of broken. It's sort of ruled by huge tech monopolies and kind of quite undemocratic. Web 3 is an opportunity for brands and platforms and users and buyers and sellers to all own a share of the networks that they create. And so, for Boson being a protocol, our primary aim is for Boson to be like the network upon which all commerce runs, but also to work with the Web3 players, to help foster an ecosystem there, and increasingly work with Web 2 or more mainstream brands and platforms to help them plug in and become part of this very inclusive movement that is Web 3.
I think for me, when we eventually get to Web 3 in the year 2055, it's all going to be about loyalty and advocacy and expanding the experience that people get when they're actually enjoying our drinks with their friends. That's our key play. I don't think we'll ever use it to acquire new customers, and maybe it could be someone's first interaction with us still, but I think it will be more like a kind of a special access only type situation for most of the brands. So for us it's loyalty and advocacy.
And for others, if I may add, is creating new business models. I was reading a report about how the hospitality industry is using Metaverse technology, and you can see many examples of different companies using NFTs as a way to create or support loyalty programs. Some others are using avatars to provide a view of their hotels and the services that they have. But there's a company that has created a hotel in the Metaverse. They don't have physical locations in the Metaverse. So it's curious to understand how different industries are using the technology, or the possibilities that technology are providing to create even complete new ideas. So as you were saying, the interest and the motivations behind this are quite dispersed and varied. And we will see more in the future for sure.
Louis, anything to add?
No, I think that everything was said. Maybe I will add something again on the community and gathering people, because for me, Web3 what is very important is that when I started to work in the Web3, before I was in traditional business networks. Always, I don't have anything against people working in the real estate and so on, but it was always the same, people in the real estate, in the insurance and so on. And now, from my opinion, because I created a club, so this is only my experiment, but I met people. There are in our club, there are cops, there are students, there are doctors, we have influencers, even football players. So this is a key time. Everyone is, Web3 is gathering curious people, and this is in those kind of time that we can imagine new things. So I'm not sure that the Metaverse is ready right now, but what I'm sure is that we have to gather virtually or physically. It's still important. So one very important thing is also the augmented reality, I think, in the physical store and so on. So yeah, the key point, my vision is gathering people to make brainstorming and stuff like that.
Good. Well, I do have to wrap up this panel. It's been really, really good knowledge. Thank you so much. I will let you guys approach the speakers, but I'm sure that you want to do that after this. So thank you so much for coming. And see you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And may I add just something? I like the comparison with the wine industry. You are all here. I think that you are builders, you are entrepreneur, and the work that we are doing right now. We are in beer markets. It's not collapsing, but it's not very great right now. It's just if I make the comparison with the wine industry, it's just the work on the soils and the vine, the shadow work. The bull market is only the harvest. So keep focus on building right now, because it's happening. The succeed will happen in a few months or years. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.